I stood in my empty living room that night, holding my son Jake's graduation photo with trembling hands. The silence felt deafening after walking away from my family just hours earlier. 1 year ago, my parents had demanded I cancel Jake's graduation celebration because my sister Amanda insisted their daughter Chloe deserved the spotlight for her high school graduation happening the same weekend. Amanda's cruel words still echoed in my mind like a broken record. He's not even that special. That moment changed everything. I chose my son over toxic family politics, walking away from decades of dysfunction. What I discovered in the year that followed would shock them all. Growing up in suburban Cleveland, I learned early that fairness wasn't a family value in the Patterson household. Amanda, 3 years younger than me, commanded attention like gravity pulls objects toward Earth. While I occupied the cramped bedroom overlooking the neighbor's garbage cans, she claimed the spacious corner room with 2 windows and built-in shelves. When Little League season arrived, Dad attended every single one of Amanda's softball games, cheering from the front row. Meanwhile, my baseball games conflicted with her schedule, so I played to empty bleachers more often than not. The pattern continued through high school. Amanda's drama club performances received family standing ovations and dinner celebrations afterward. My track meets earned half-hearted congratulations if I was lucky. College applications brought similar treatment. Mom spent weekends helping Amanda craft essays for prestigious universities, while suggesting I consider community college to save money and figure things out. The favoritism wasn't subtle, but I told myself it would change once I proved my worth as an adult. Meeting Sarah in college changed my perspective on what healthy relationships looked like. She came from a family where achievements were celebrated equally, where love wasn't rationed based on performance. We married 2 years after graduation, building a modest life in Akron, where I worked as an accountant, and she taught elementary school. When Jake was born 12 years ago, I promised him something I never had: unconditional support and genuine pride in his efforts. Amanda's life followed a different trajectory. She married Marcus, a successful real estate developer, and moved into a 6-bedroom colonial in the wealthiest suburb of Cleveland. Their daughter Chloe arrived 2 years after Jake, and the comparisons began immediately. Even as toddlers, family gatherings became showcases for Chloe's advanced vocabulary, while Jake's developmental milestones went unmentioned. Mom would gush over Chloe's preschool artwork displayed on Amanda's refrigerator, then politely glance at Jake's drawings before changing the subject. The academic challenges started in 2nd grade, when Jake's teacher recommended testing for learning disabilities. The diagnosis of dyslexia explained his struggles with reading and writing, but it also marked the beginning of years of extra work and expensive tutoring. Sarah and I took second jobs to afford the specialized programs Jake needed. Every small victory felt monumental: the first book he read independently, his first B+ on a writing assignment, the gradual improvement in his confidence. Meanwhile, Chloe sailed through her private school education with seemingly effortless grace. Amanda's social media became a highlight reel of honor roll certificates, academic awards, and glowing teacher conferences. Family dinners turned into lengthy discussions of Chloe's latest achievements, while Jake's progress got dismissed with comments like, "Well, academics were never his strong suit," or "Not everyone is college material." The financial disparity became more obvious as the kids grew older. Chloe attended summer camps in Europe and took private music lessons with renowned instructors. Jake spent summers at the local recreation center and learned guitar from YouTube videos. When Chloe needed a new laptop for school, my parents offered to split the cost with Amanda. When Jake's old computer finally died, we scraped together money for a refurbished model from the electronics store. By junior year, something shifted in Jake's academic performance. Years of tutoring and his own determined effort began paying dividends. His grades improved dramatically, and teachers started praising his analytical thinking and creative problem-solving skills. The kid who once struggled to read picture books was tackling advanced literature and writing thoughtful essays. His confidence soared, and for the first time he talked about college as a real possibility. I expected my parents to acknowledge this transformation, to show some pride in their grandson's perseverance. Instead, Mom's response was lukewarm at best. "That's nice, dear. I suppose everyone develops at their own pace." Dad nodded absently and changed the subject to Chloe's latest academic honor. The indifference stung, but the real blow came later. During a casual conversation with Mom about college planning, she mentioned how helpful it had been to hire a consultant for Chloe's applications. The same woman who had guided Chloe through SAT prep essay writing and scholarship applications. The same services that cost thousands of dollars and gave students significant advantages in the admissions process. When I asked if they might consider helping Jake with similar support, Mom's response was swift and final. "Oh, honey, that's really more for students with serious academic potential." The discovery that they had been secretly funding Chloe's expensive test preparation, while never offering to help with Jake's tutoring costs, felt like a punch to the stomach. They had money to invest in their golden granddaughter's future, but couldn't spare a dollar to help their struggling grandson overcome legitimate learning challenges. The favoritism I had experienced as a child was now poisoning the next generation, and I realized that nothing I did would ever change their perspective. Spring of Jake's senior year brought the news we had been hoping for since his dyslexia diagnosis 8 years earlier. Not only was he graduating with a solid GPA, but he had been accepted to Ohio State University with a partial academic scholarship. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, and Sarah and I celebrated with tears of joy and pride. Jake's hard work had paid off in ways that exceeded our wildest expectations. Planning his graduation celebration felt like the most natural thing in the world. We booked a private dining room at his favorite restaurant for the Saturday after graduation, sending invitations to both sides of our families and Jake's closest friends. The guest list included my parents, Amanda's family, Sarah's relatives, and about 20 other people who had supported Jake through his educational journey. Nothing elaborate or expensive, just a chance to honor our son's achievements with the people who mattered most. When I called Mom to confirm their attendance, her response caught me off guard. Instead of enthusiasm about Jake's accomplishments, she sounded distracted and uncomfortable. After several minutes of stilted conversation, the truth emerged: Amanda had already planned an elaborate graduation party for Chloe the same weekend. Not just any party, but a catered affair at the prestigious Brookside Country Club, with over 100 guests, live music, and professional photography. Mom's suggestion that we reschedule Jake's celebration hit me like cold water. "You know how much this means to Amanda," she said, as if Jake's milestone was somehow less significant. "Chloe's going to Yale after all. This is really a once-in-a-lifetime achievement for our family." The implication was clear. Jake's state university acceptance wasn't worthy of family attention when compared to Chloe's Ivy League success. I tried to explain that graduation weekend was specifically chosen because it was the one time all of Jake's friends and our relatives could attend. Moving the date would mean losing half our guests and diminishing what should be Jake's special moment. Mom's response was a frustrated sigh, followed by, "I'm sure you can work something out. Family should come first." Dad's intervention made things worse. When I called to discuss the scheduling conflict directly with him, his tone was matter-of-fact and dismissive. "Gray, be reasonable. Jake will have plenty of opportunities to celebrate throughout his life. This is Chloe's moment to shine, and frankly, her achievement deserves priority. We've already committed to Amanda's event, and backing out now would cause serious family problems." The conversation revealed how little they understood about Jake's journey. To them, graduation was just another milestone, not the culmination of years of struggle and determination. They couldn't see past the surface-level comparison between state school and Ivy League to appreciate the real victory Jake had achieved. Their grandson had overcome learning disabilities through sheer persistence, but all they saw was a lesser accomplishment, overshadowed by their granddaughter's academic prowess. My attempt at compromise fell on deaf ears. I suggested separate celebrations at different times, perhaps a lunch for Jake and evening party for Chloe. Amanda's response came through Mom, in the form of an ultimatum disguised as family unity. The extended relatives couldn't be expected to attend multiple events, and since Chloe's party was already planned, and more significant, any other celebration would be redundant and selfish. The phone call with Amanda herself confirmed my worst fears about the situation. Her voice carried the same condescending tone I remembered from childhood, the sound of someone accustomed to getting their way. "Gray, why are you being so difficult about this? Everyone knows Chloe's achievement is extraordinary. Jake's graduation is nice and all, but let's be realistic about what deserves family attention. I've already sent invitations to aunts, uncles, and cousins. The country club is booked. Everything is arranged." When I mentioned that we had also sent invitations and made commitments, Amanda's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "To that little restaurant in Akron. Come on, this is the country club we're talking about. People will obviously choose the better event. You're just making things awkward for everyone by insisting on competing with Chloe's party." The conversation took a darker turn when Amanda revealed the extent of her planning. She had deliberately chosen the same weekend as Jake's graduation, despite knowing our date in advance. The timing wasn't coincidental, but strategic, designed to force exactly this kind of choice. She wanted to prove that when it mattered, family priorities would align with her expectations rather than mine. Sarah found me sitting at the kitchen table that evening, staring at Jake's acceptance letter and trying to process what had just happened. Her tears mixed with anger as I explained the situation. "How can they do this to him?" she whispered. "He's worked so hard. This should be his time to feel proud and supported." The worst part came when Jake overheard us discussing the family conflict. His face fell as he realized his grandparents and aunt might skip his celebration for his cousin's party. True to his character, he tried to minimize his own disappointment. "It's okay, Dad. I don't really need a big party anyway. The important thing is that I got into college." But I could see the hurt in his eyes, the same feeling of being second best that I had carried throughout my own childhood. The discovery that Amanda had deliberately scheduled her event to conflict with ours was a calculated move that revealed the depth of her need to assert dominance. This wasn't about graduation parties or family scheduling. It was about maintaining the hierarchy that had always placed her needs above mine, and now extending that dynamic to our children. The message was unmistakable. Even on Jake's biggest day, he would remain secondary to Chloe's achievements in our family's eyes. The family meeting at my parents' house was supposed to resolve the graduation conflict, but it became something far more devastating. Mom had insisted we all gather to work things out like adults and find a solution that honored both grandchildren. I arrived with hope that reasonable discussion might lead to compromise, maybe even acknowledgement of what graduation meant to Jake after his years of academic struggle. Amanda came prepared for war. She carried a leather portfolio containing printed timelines, academic records, and what appeared to be a detailed comparison chart. Marcus trailed behind her, checking his phone, and looking like he would rather be anywhere else. Dad sat at the head of the dining table with his arms crossed, while Mom bustled around offering coffee and cookies as if this were a pleasant family gathering. The presentation Amanda had prepared was calculated cruelty disguised as logical argument. She spread papers across the table, showing Chloe's academic achievements, honor roll certificates, standardized test scores, advanced placement course completions, and college acceptances. Then she produced Jake's more modest record average grades until junior year test scores in the middle range acceptance to one state university with partial scholarship. "I think the numbers speak for themselves," Amanda said, tapping her manicured finger on the documents. "Chloe has maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout high school, while taking the most challenging courses available. She scored in the 98th percentile on the SAT and was accepted to 5 top-tier universities. This is the kind of achievement that comes once in a generation for our family." Dad nodded along, as if Amanda's presentation proved an undeniable truth. "The facts are clear. Chloe's accomplishment is genuinely exceptional, While Jake's graduation, though, nice is fairly routine. When family resources and attention are limited, we have to prioritize what truly matters. I tried to explain Jake's journey, how overcoming dyslexia made his achievements more meaningful, not less. The hours of tutoring, the tears over homework, the gradual building of confidence and skills. How his partial scholarship represented triumph over learning disabilities that could have derailed his education entirely. But my words seemed to bounce off their preconceived notions about what constituted real success. Mom's contribution was a gentle but devastating dismissal. Of course, we're proud of Jake for doing his best. But Amanda has a point about the different levels of achievement here. Chloe's opportunities are so much more significant for the family's reputation. We want to support the grandchild who's really going places. The conversation took an uglier turn when Amanda questioned Jake's intelligence directly. "Let's be honest about what we're dealing with here," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Jake has always struggled academically. Even with all that expensive tutoring, his performance has been mediocre at best. He's participation trophy material, not scholarship winner material. Why should we pretend otherwise?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair, finally speaking up. "Amanda, that seems a little harsh." The kid worked hard. But his half-hearted defense was immediately shut down by his wife's sharp glare. Amanda's cruelty escalated as she picked up Jake's graduation photo from my wallet. She studied it with theatrical contemplation before delivering the words that would end our family relationship forever. "He's not even that special. Look at this face. Average student, average prospects, average everything. Why are we supposed to celebrate mediocrity when we have real excellence to honor?" The silence that followed was deafening. I waited for my parents to defend their grandson, to show even basic human decency toward a child who was family, regardless of his academic performance. Instead, Dad cleared his throat and said, "Amanda raises valid points about prioritizing our limited time and resources." Mom nodded in agreement, adding, "We just want to be practical about where we focus our energy. Chloe's achievement really is remarkable, and she deserves to have her moment without competition or distraction." The ultimatum came wrapped in false reasonableness. Amanda leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile and delivered their final decision. "Here's what's going to happen. Everyone important to our family will attend Chloe's graduation celebration at the country club. It's already planned, already paid for, and already represents what this family values. If you want to have some little gathering for Jake afterward, that's your choice. But don't expect family participation in competing events." The drive home was silent, except for Sarah's quiet crying in the passenger seat. Jake was at baseball practice, unaware that his own relatives had just dismissed his worth as a human being. That evening, when he called to ask about the family meeting, his voice was small and vulnerable. "Dad, am I really not special? Is going to Ohio State not good enough for our family?" I held the phone with shaking hands, feeling the weight of a decision that would change everything. In that moment, I understood that protecting my son meant more than keeping family peace. It meant choosing his dignity over their dysfunction, his self-worth over their warped priorities. The boy who had fought so hard to overcome learning challenges deserved better than relatives who saw him as an embarrassment to their family image. The text message from Amanda that night confirmed what I already knew. Hope you'll make the right choice for once in your life. Family loyalty means supporting what actually matters, not enabling false celebrations of minor achievements. Chloe's party is where the real family will be. As I tucked Jake into bed that night and listened to him worry about disappointing his grandparents, I realized that the choice wasn't really about graduation parties. It was about what kind of father I wanted to be and what values I would pass down to my son. The answer was becoming crystal clear, even if the consequences would be painful. Sleep evaded me that night as I wrestled with a decision that felt impossible, yet inevitable. I walked through our quiet house, looking at family photos that told the story of Jake's childhood, his first day of school with thick glasses and a nervous smile soccer teams, where he tried his best, despite limited athletic ability birthday parties, with genuine friends who loved him for his kindness and humor. None of these images showed an average kid. They showed my son worthy of celebration and unconditional love. Dawn found me sitting at the kitchen table with Jake sharing cereal and conversation about his upcoming finals. He was excited about senior project presentations, nervous about calculus, and optimistic about meeting his future roommate at Ohio State. Watching his animated face, I saw intelligence, resilience, and character that couldn't be measured by standardized tests or Ivy League acceptances. Amanda's cruel assessment was not just wrong, but deliberately blind to who Jake really was. The conversation that changed everything started with Jake's innocent question about graduation weekend plans. "Are Grandma and Grandpa coming to the party? I want to show them my scholarship letter." His genuine excitement about sharing his achievement with his grandparents broke my heart, knowing how they truly felt about his accomplishments. I found myself telling Jake the truth about family dynamics in age-appropriate terms. How some people measure worth by external achievements rather than character. How his learning challenges made his success more impressive, not less. How real love celebrates effort and growth rather than demanding perfection. By the end of our conversation, Jake's eyes were clearer and more confident. "Dad, if they can't see that I've worked really hard and accomplished something important, maybe they're the ones with the problem," he said with wisdom that belied his 18 years. "I'd rather celebrate with people who actually care about me." That conversation crystallized my decision. I called Mom first, my hands steady, despite the magnitude of what I was about to do. Her voice was cheerful, probably expecting me to announce our surrender to Amanda's demands. Instead, I told her we would be hosting Jake's graduation celebration as originally planned, with or without family attendance. Mom's shock was genuine. "Gray, you can't be serious. After everything Amanda has arranged, after the commitments we've made, you're really going to put us in this impossible position." "The only impossible position is asking me to treat my son like he doesn't matter," I replied. "Jake has worked harder than any of you realize to get where he is. His graduation will be celebrated by people who love him, period." The phone call with Amanda was brutal, but necessary. Her fury was immediate and explosive. "You ungrateful, selfish idiot. Do you have any idea what you're destroying? This family has bent over backward to include you and your mediocre son, and this is how you repay that generosity." I let her vent for several minutes before responding calmly, "I'm choosing my child's well-being over your need to feel superior. If that destroys our relationship, so be it." "Fine," she screamed before hanging up. "Don't come crawling back when you realize what you've thrown away." Dad's text message arrived an hour later. "Disappointed in your selfishness. Family unity should matter more than pride. You've made your choice." The graduation party proceeded with sparse but meaningful attendance. Uncle Frank, my father's brother, surprised everyone by showing up with his wife Betty. "That little girl of yours is spoiled rotten," he confided to me during dinner. "Always has been. What you're doing for Jake takes real courage, and I wanted him to know he has family support." Sarah's parents and siblings filled several tables with genuine warmth and celebration. Jake's friends brought energy and laughter that made the restaurant feel festive, despite smaller numbers. Our neighbors who had watched Jake grow up and overcome challenges offered heartfelt congratulations and promises of continued friendship through college. The most powerful moment came when Jake stood to thank everyone for attending. His voice was steady and grateful as he acknowledged the people who had supported his journey: teachers who stayed after school for extra help, tutors who believed in his potential, friends who never made him feel different because of his learning disability, and parents who never gave up on him. "I know some family members chose not to be here tonight," Jake said, looking directly at me. "But I'm learning that real family isn't about blood relations. It's about people who show up when it matters, who celebrate your victories, and support you through struggles. Everyone in this room has been real family to me, and I'm grateful." Meanwhile, Amanda's social media exploded with photos from Chloe's elaborate country club celebration. The images showed exactly what I expected: designer decorations, professional catering, and posed family pictures that looked perfect but felt hollow. The pointed captions about celebrating real achievement and family priorities were clearly aimed at me, but they no longer carried any power to hurt. That night, as Sarah and I cleaned up after our modest celebration, I made the decision that would define our family's future. No more walking on eggshells around Amanda's moods. No more accepting crumbs of affection from parents who couldn't see past their own prejudices. No more exposing Jake to relatives who viewed him as insufficient compared to his perfect cousin. The no-contact decision wasn't made in anger, but in clarity. I changed our phone numbers, blocked family members on social media, and instructed Jake's school not to share information with his grandparents. When Uncle Frank asked if I was sure about such drastic measures, my answer was simple. I'm protecting my son from people who will never value him appropriately. That's what fathers do. The last family communication was a letter from Mom, filled with tearful accusations about my stubbornness and predictions of eventual regret. She couldn't understand that walking away from toxic family dynamics wasn't punishment, but liberation. The son they had dismissed as selfish was actually prioritizing healthy relationships over dysfunctional obligations. 6 months into our no-contact experiment, the relief was undeniable. Jake flourished without the constant underlying tension of family gatherings where he felt judged and found wanting. Sarah's stress levels dropped dramatically without Amanda's competitive commentary and Mom's subtle criticisms. Our marriage strengthened without the external pressure to maintain relationships that drained rather than nourished us. The decision to cut contact wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about creating space for authentic relationships to flourish and protecting our son from relatives who would never appreciate his unique worth. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is walk away from people who refuse to love their child appropriately. The first few months of no contact brought unexpected waves of grief, mixed with profound relief. I found myself mourning not the family I had lost, but the family I had never really had. The parents who might have celebrated Jake's achievements, the sister who could have been a supportive aunt, the grandparents who should have delighted in their grandson's perseverance. Accepting that these people existed only in my imagination was both painful and liberating. Jake's transition to Ohio State exceeded our highest expectations. His regular video calls home bubbled with enthusiasm about challenging courses, new friendships, and academic opportunities. The kid who once struggled to read was now tackling philosophy seminars and research projects with professors who appreciated his analytical thinking. Without the shadow of family disapproval hanging over him, his confidence soared to levels we had never seen before. "Dad, you should see my economics professor," Jake said during one Sunday call, his face glowing with excitement. She assigned this complex problem set that everyone was complaining about, but I actually figured out a solution that impressed her. She's recommending me for the honors program next semester. Can you believe that? Sarah and I could absolutely believe it. We had always seen Jake's potential, but now he was beginning to see it himself. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the hesitant boy who apologized for his learning differences, replaced by a young man who understood that his unique perspective was an asset rather than a limitation. Our marriage evolved in unexpected ways, without the constant stress of family drama. Sarah received a promotion to assistant principal at her elementary school, partly because she no longer spent emotional energy managing my family's dysfunction. Our evenings became peaceful opportunities to focus on each other, rather than debriefing the latest family crisis or strategizing how to handle Amanda's competitive attacks. The financial freedom was startling. Without expensive gifts for every family birthday contribution, expectations for Amanda's elaborate parties, and travel costs for obligatory holiday visits, we discovered extra money for things that actually mattered. Sarah enrolled in graduate courses toward her master's degree. I bought quality photography equipment and rediscovered my passion for capturing nature images during weekend hiking trips. Those hiking adventures became symbolic of our liberation. Every Saturday morning, Sarah and I explored trails throughout Ohio, sometimes joined by Jake when he was home from college. The conversations during these walks were genuine and deep, unmarred by the superficial chatter that had characterized family gatherings. We talked about dreams, books, current events, and philosophical questions without worrying about saying the wrong thing or triggering family drama. Jake's Thanksgiving visit during his freshman year brought the most wonderful surprise: his girlfriend Emma, a pre-veterinary student from Michigan, who shared his love of science fiction and terrible puns. Watching them together revealed how much Jake had grown in confidence and emotional maturity. He was comfortable with himself in ways that had been impossible when every family interaction reinforced his supposed inadequacy. Emma fit into our small family celebration, seamlessly helping Sarah cook and enthusiastically listening to my photography stories. After dinner, she pulled me aside to thank me for raising such a wonderful son. "Jake talks about you all the time," she said. "How you and Mrs. Patterson supported him through his learning challenges. How you believed in him when other people didn't. He's the most resilient and kind person I've ever met, and that's obviously because of the values you instilled." The absence of toxic family traditions allowed us to create new ones based on what we actually enjoyed rather than obligation. Thanksgiving became an intimate gathering with Sarah's family and a few close friends. Christmas focused on meaningful gifts and quiet celebration rather than competitive gift exchanges and forced festivity. New Year's Eve was spent with Jake and Emma, playing board games and sharing goals for the coming year. My photography hobby evolved from casual weekend activity to serious artistic pursuit. Without family obligations consuming every spare moment, I had time to develop skills and build a portfolio. Local art galleries started displaying my nature photographs, and I even sold several pieces to tourists visiting Ohio's state parks. The creative outlet provided fulfillment I had never experienced while managing family relationships that required constant emotional labor. Jake's academic success continued throughout his freshman year, culminating in Dean's List recognition both semesters. When he called to share the news, his voice carried pure joy, unmixed with the anxiety that had characterized his high school achievements. "I'm actually good at this, Dad. Like really good. My professors keep talking about graduate school possibilities, and I'm starting to think maybe I could do something like that." The transformation in Jake's self-perception was the greatest gift of our decision to prioritize healthy relationships over biological obligations. Without relatives constantly comparing him unfavorably to Chloe, he was free to discover his own talents and pursue his own path. His learning disability became just one aspect of his identity, rather than the defining characteristic that supposedly limited his potential. Sarah's master's degree program challenged her intellectually in ways she hadn't experienced since college. Her research project focused on supporting children with learning differences, inspired partly by Jake's journey and partly by her desire to help other families navigate similar challenges. Watching her present findings at education conferences filled me with pride and admiration for the woman who had always believed in our son's potential. The year mark of no contact arrived without fanfare or regret. By then, our lives had reorganized around authentic relationships and genuine interests. The space previously occupied by family drama was now filled with meaningful work, creative pursuits, and connections with people who appreciated us for who we actually were, rather than who they wanted us to be. Uncle Frank occasionally sent updates about family developments, though he respected our decision to maintain distance. According to his reports, our absence was becoming increasingly obvious at family gatherings. The dynamic had shifted noticeably, without our presence to absorb Amanda's competitive energy and provide targets for subtle criticism. The most telling moment came when I received an unexpected job opportunity in Colorado, a promotion that would allow me to lead a small accounting firm while living near the mountains I had come to love through photography. Instead of immediately rejecting the idea due to family proximity, Sarah and I seriously considered the possibility. The realization that we were free to make decisions based purely on our own happiness and professional growth was intoxicating. As we researched Colorado neighborhoods and discussed the logistics of relocation, I understood that cutting contact with toxic family members hadn't diminished our lives, but expanded them exponentially. We were no longer prisoners of dysfunctional dynamics or hostages to relatives who would never appreciate our worth. The family we had built together, combined with friends who chose to love us unconditionally, was infinitely more valuable than the biological relationships we had lost. Exactly 1 year after walking away from my family, their carefully constructed world began showing cracks that would eventually become chasms. The job opportunity in Colorado had progressed to serious negotiations with Sarah and I, planning a reconnaissance trip to explore potential neighborhoods near Boulder. Jake was thriving in his sophomore year, having declared a double major in economics and environmental science that perfectly suited his analytical mind and growing passion for sustainability issues. Our social media presence, though modest, told the story of a family flourishing without toxic influences. Photos from hiking trips showed genuine smiles and natural joy. Jake's academic achievements were documented with pride, but without the defensive urgency that had characterized our previous celebrations. Sarah's professional accomplishments, my artistic pursuits, and our obvious happiness together painted a picture of people who had found peace and purpose. The first crack in the family wall came through Betty, Uncle Frank's wife, who called under the pretense of sharing neighborhood news. Her real message was carefully embedded in casual conversation. "Your mother has been asking Frank about you quite a bit lately. She seems genuinely worried about how you're doing, especially with Jake so far away at college. I think she's starting to realize that cutting contact might have been a mistake." The approach was transparent, but revealed important information. Mom was monitoring our lives through intermediaries, trying to gauge whether we were struggling without family support. The fact that we were obviously thriving probably came as an unwelcome surprise to people who had predicted disaster for our stubborn independence. More direct contact attempts followed within weeks. A letter arrived from Mom, forwarded through my workplace, since she no longer had our home address. The contents were a masterpiece of manipulation, disguised as maternal concern. She wrote about missing Jake terribly, wondering how he was adjusting to college life, and expressing deep sadness about the misunderstanding that had separated our family. The letter carefully avoided acknowledging any wrongdoing while placing full responsibility for reconciliation on my shoulders. "I know pride can be difficult to overcome," she wrote, "but family is more important than whatever disagreements we might have had. Jake needs his grandparents in his life, and we need him in ours. Surely we can move past this stubbornness and focus on what really matters." Amanda's attempts at reconciliation were less subtle, but more revealing. She enlisted mutual acquaintances to approach me at professional networking events and community gatherings. The messages they delivered were remarkably consistent. Amanda missed our relationship, regretted harsh words spoken in the heat of emotion, and hoped we could rebuild our bond for the sake of family unity. These intermediaries seemed genuinely puzzled by the depth of our estrangement. "She really does seem sorry," said Linda, a colleague who had known Amanda through volunteer work. "Maybe she's learned from her mistakes. Family relationships are so precious, and life is too short to hold grudges." The pressure intensified when Dad experienced chest pains that led to emergency room visits and cardiac testing. Though the results showed minor issues requiring medication rather than surgery, the health scare triggered a family crisis that highlighted my absence. Uncle Frank called to inform me about Dad's condition, and I could hear the unspoken expectation that medical emergencies should override relationship boundaries. "Your father keeps asking about you and Jake," Frank reported. "The doctor says stress isn't helping his recovery, and I think he's realizing how much he misses having his son and grandson in his life. Maybe this is an opportunity to heal old wounds before it's too late." The manipulation was obvious, but emotionally challenging. Using Dad's health to pressure reconciliation was exactly the kind of toxic behavior that had prompted our no-contact decision in the first place. However, the implied threats about running out of time and living with regret were designed to exploit my sense of filial duty and fear of permanent loss. Amanda's most desperate attempt came through Marcus, who contacted me directly for the first time since our family meeting the previous year. His approach was refreshingly honest about their marriage problems and Amanda's growing instability. "She's been obsessed with your family situation," he admitted during an unexpected phone call. "It's affecting everything: her sleep, her mood, her relationship with Chloe. I think she's finally understanding that she might have pushed too hard." Marcus revealed details about Amanda's life that Uncle Frank's updates had only hinted at. Chloe's adjustment to Yale had been disastrous, culminating in a mental health crisis that required withdrawal from school and intensive therapy. The pressure to maintain perfect academic performance had overwhelmed her, leading to anxiety attacks and depression that made continuing her education impossible. "Chloe moved back home last month," Marcus confided. "She's working part-time at a coffee shop while figuring out her next steps. Amanda's having a really hard time accepting that her perfect daughter isn't so perfect after all." Meanwhile, Jake's success stories keep filtering back through family connections, and the contrast is driving Amanda crazy. The revelation that Amanda's marriage was deteriorating added another layer to her desperation for reconciliation. Marcus was spending increasing time at work to avoid home conflicts, and Chloe's struggles had created tension between them about parenting approaches and future expectations. The family unit that had appeared so superior to ours was crumbling under the weight of unrealistic standards and competitive pressure. Mom's birthday arrived with an emotional voicemail that revealed the depth of her regret and desperation. "Gray, it's your mother," she began, her voice thick with tears. "I know you probably won't listen to this, but I had to try. It's my 70th birthday today, and all I can think about is how much I miss you and Jake. I made terrible mistakes, and I'm sorry. Please call me back. Please let me try to make this right." The message continued for several minutes, with Mom acknowledging specific instances of favoritism and admitting that Jake's achievements deserved celebration and recognition. She spoke about lying awake at night, regretting words that couldn't be taken back, and choices that had cost her relationship with her son and grandson. The pain in her voice was genuine, but it was also clearly calculated to trigger my protective instincts and desire to ease her suffering. Extended family members began reaching out with increasing frequency, sharing stories about conversations with my parents that revealed their growing regret. Cousin Jennifer called to report that Mom had broken down crying at Easter dinner when someone mentioned college graduation season. Aunt Dorothy sent a Facebook message describing Dad's obvious sadness whenever Jake's name came up in family discussions. The most shocking revelation came through Uncle Frank, who discovered the full extent of their financial contribution to Amanda's lifestyle and Chloe's education. "They've been supporting her family for years," he told me confidentially. "Private school tuition, country club memberships, expensive vacations. Now that Chloe dropped out and Amanda's marriage is struggling, they're facing serious financial strain. I think they're beginning to understand the cost of playing favorites." As their attempts at reconciliation escalated, I realized that our family's success without them had become a mirror, reflecting their own dysfunction and poor choices. The son they had dismissed as selfish was building a healthy, thriving family, while their golden daughter struggled with mental health and marital problems. The grandson they had considered mediocre was excelling academically, while their perfect granddaughter had crashed under pressure. The irony was profound, but not satisfying. I felt no pleasure in their suffering, only sadness that it had taken such dramatic consequences for them to question their behavior. The year of peace and growth we had experienced without their toxic influence proved that cutting contact had been the right decision, regardless of their belated regret and desperate attempts to rebuild bridges they had burned through their own choices. The Colorado job offer became official on a Wednesday morning in late spring, exactly 13 months after we had walked away from my family. The position would double my salary, while providing opportunities for creative growth in a firm that valued work-life balance and employee development. Sarah had already received preliminary approval for her master's degree transfer to the University of Colorado, where she could complete her research while exploring new career opportunities in educational administration. Jake's engagement announcement came just days later, delivered through a video call that found Sarah and me crying tears of pure joy. He and Emma had been talking seriously about marriage since Christmas, and his proposal during a weekend camping trip had been everything she had dreamed of. Intimate, thoughtful, and perfectly timed during their favorite shared activity. The wedding would take place after graduation, when they both started their respective graduate programs, him in environmental economics and her in veterinary medicine. "Dad, I need to ask you something important." Jake said, his face serious, despite the happiness in his eyes. "Emma and I want you and Mom to walk me down the aisle together. You've both been such incredible examples of what marriage should look like, and I can't imagine starting my own married life without acknowledging everything you've taught me about love and partnership." The request was unconventional, but perfectly suited to our family dynamic. Jake had grown up seeing Sarah and me as equal partners in parenting and decision-making, so having both parents escort him felt natural and meaningful. The symbolism was powerful. Our small family unit, strengthened by adversity and unified by genuine love, celebrating the next generation's success in creating their own healthy relationships. Planning for our relocation to Colorado required several trips back to Ohio to finalize work transitions and pack our belongings. During one of these visits, the inevitable confrontation finally occurred. I was loading photography equipment into a storage unit when a familiar voice called my name from across the parking lot. Mom approached cautiously, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. "Gray, please don't run away," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I don't deserve your time, but I need to say some things that should have been said months ago." The conversation that followed was painful, but necessary. Mom's apologies were specific and comprehensive, acknowledging not just the graduation conflict, but years of favoritism that had damaged our family relationships. She admitted to enabling Amanda's cruel behavior, failing to protect Jake from unfair comparisons, and prioritizing appearances over authentic love and support. I was so focused on what looked impressive to other people that I completely missed what was actually impressive about my own grandson, she said, tears streaming down her face. Jake's kindness, his perseverance, his ability to overcome challenges with grace and humor. Those are the qualities that matter in life, and I was too blind to see them. Dad joined us after a few minutes, looking genuinely remorseful and significantly aged by stress and regret. His apologies were more halting, but equally heartfelt, focusing on his failure as a grandfather to support Jake through his learning challenges and academic journey. "I should have been proud of that boy every single day," he admitted. "Instead, I let Amanda's competitive nonsense cloud my judgment about what really matters in a family." The most difficult moment came when they asked about attending Jake's graduation and wedding. Their desire to rebuild relationships was genuine, but the damage couldn't be repaired through simple apologies. I explained that any future contact would need to be gradual, respectful of boundaries, and focused entirely on Jake's comfort level rather than their emotional needs. "He's willing to consider limited contact," I told them carefully, "but only if there's genuine change in behavior, not just regret about consequences. And Amanda isn't part of any reconciliation discussion until she takes full responsibility for her actions and demonstrates real change over time." The revelation about Amanda's current situation came through their reluctant admissions about family dynamics during our absence. Her marriage to Marcus was ending in divorce proceedings, with Chloe living primarily with her father to avoid her mother's emotional instability. Amanda had been in therapy for several months, supposedly working on issues related to narcissistic behavior and competitive family dynamics. "She knows she destroyed something precious," Mom said quietly. "Whether she can actually change remains to be seen." but she's facing consequences for her choices just like we are. The financial strain of supporting Amanda's lifestyle had forced my parents to downsize their home and significantly reduce their standard of living. The country club membership was canceled, expensive vacations were eliminated, and retirement plans were dramatically altered. They were learning too late that enabling dysfunction carries real costs beyond damaged relationships. Jake's college graduation ceremony took place on a perfect May afternoon, with Sarah Emma's family, and tentatively reconciled grandparents in attendance. Jake had specifically requested that his grandparents come not to forgive their past behavior, but to witness firsthand the man he had become despite their lack of support. His valedictorian speech for the environmental science program was brilliant, passionate, and entirely focused on future possibilities rather than past obstacles. The most powerful moment came when Jake acknowledged his support system during his acceptance of the Outstanding Student Award. My parents taught me that real strength comes from overcoming challenges rather than avoiding them, he said, looking directly at Mom and Dad. They showed me that love means believing in someone's potential, even when others can't see it. And they demonstrated that sometimes protecting the people you love requires making difficult choices about the relationships you maintain. The message was unmistakable, but delivered with grace rather than bitterness. Jake wasn't seeking revenge against family members who had dismissed him, but he was clearly establishing expectations for future relationships based on respect and genuine support rather than obligation and appearances. The wedding planning process became an opportunity for gradual relationship rebuilding with my parents, though Amanda remained excluded, pending significant behavioral changes. Mom and Dad approached their limited involvement with humility and gratitude, understanding that their participation was a privilege to be earned rather than a right to be demanded. Their transformation wasn't complete or perfect, but it was genuine enough to create space for cautious optimism. They attended pre-marriage counseling sessions with Jake and Emma. When invited, listened without judgment to stories about our life in Colorado, and gradually rebuilt trust through consistent demonstration of changed priorities and values. The life lesson that emerged from our family's journey was profound and multifaceted. Protecting the people we love sometimes requires making choices that appear cruel or selfish to others who can't understand the dynamics involved. Authentic relationships built on respect and genuine affection will always be more valuable than biological connections maintained through obligation and guilt. Jake's graduation speech contained the perfect summary of what we had learned. Success isn't measured by external achievements or comparative rankings. Real success is building relationships based on love, rather than competition, supporting each other through challenges, rather than judging performance, and choosing character over appearances in every decision we make. As our family packed for the move to Colorado, I reflected on the transformation that had begun with walking away from a toxic graduation party conflict. The son they had dismissed as selfish had built a thriving family while their golden daughter struggled with mental health and relationship failures. The grandson they had considered mediocre was beginning graduate school with prestigious fellowships, while their perfect granddaughter worked in food service while figuring out her life direction. But the real victory wasn't in their recognition of our worth or their regret about past choices. The victory was in the life we had built, independent of their approval, the relationships we had nurtured based on authentic love, and the example we had provided for Jake about prioritizing healthy dynamics over dysfunctional obligations. The Colorado mountains represented fresh starts and unlimited possibilities for our family's future. Jake and Emma would visit during school breaks, building their own traditions with us, while maintaining appropriate boundaries with extended family. Sarah would complete her master's degree, while exploring new professional opportunities in educational leadership. My photography would flourish in landscapes that inspired creativity and reflection. Most importantly, Jake would continue growing into the remarkable man he was always meant to become, supported by people who saw his worth clearly and loved him unconditionally. The boy who had once worried about being special enough now understood that his value had never been in question for the people who truly mattered. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the courage to walk away from relationships that diminish their sense of worth. And sometimes, the most loving thing we can do as parents is choose their emotional well-being over family expectations, their authentic happiness over obligation and guilt. The ending of our story wasn't about revenge or punishment, but about the quiet satisfaction of building a life based on genuine love, mutual respect, and unwavering support for each other's dreams and potential. That kind of success can't be measured by external achievements or comparative rankings. It can only be experienced through the daily choice to prioritize healthy relationships over toxic traditions, authentic connection over biological obligation, and character over appearances. As we drove toward our new life in Colorado, with Jake's graduation photo displayed proudly on the dashboard and Sarah's hand in mine, I understood that we had won something far more valuable than family approval. We had won the right to define our own worth, create our own traditions, and build relationships based on who we actually were, rather than who others wanted us to be. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family loyalty and protecting someone you love? Sometimes, the hardest decisions lead to the most meaningful transformations, and walking away can be the first step toward building something better. I'd love to hear your thoughts about family dynamics and the courage it takes to prioritize healthy relationships over obligation. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges and finding authentic happiness. Sharing these experiences helps others understand they're not alone in facing difficult family situations. So please share this with someone who might benefit from hearing about choosing love over loyalty when the two conflict. Thank you for listening to our family's journey, and I hope it inspires you to trust your instincts about protecting the people who matter most in your life.